So, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Recharged? I'm good too. Actually a bit tired. I was on another one from 8 o'clock.
Oh, really?
Yes, I don't know why so soon, but it was our member from FTP, and he's in Pakistan, and he's a walk-in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
So he
interesting. How
wanted
did
to
he figure
share.
that out? Did he channel or meditate on that or
No,
no?
he just had a huge transformation, just like that.
Really?
So yeah, so he just experienced himself in the same body, but looking at his past life and his current life is like that's not me anymore.
Hmm.
It's just like really shifted. So yeah.
I'm curious how that works because I definitely look back sometimes and I'm like, that feels like a completely different lifetime that I experienced in the past.
And he wasn't really talking about that as much though, but
Oh, really?
um yeah, it's maybe very different experience for everyone. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just curious how that works or how you would recognize. I've heard of the walk-ins and I've heard of, even people exchanging like angels taking, being walk-ins and stuff like that, but I've never heard of how or why or, how all that process works. So I'm curious to understand how you would come to that conclusion.
Well, it's a different subject, but just to conclude, or yeah, before we move on to the next topic, he said he was sort of like abducted.
Hmm,
Mm. Anyway,
interesting.
so you can watch if you want.
Yeah, yeah, I'm curious. Because that I've heard of people, I was just watching.
I'm not sure why I'm freezing. Am I freezing for you?
Yeah, you were a little bit.
I was okay. I'm not sure why. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I was watching some girl the other day. She's a channeler and she was talking about how she was abducted, but they like erased all of her memories until it was like time to kind of be ready to remember it all now, and everything's kind of coming back to her. Yeah, so I thought that was kind of interesting how and it seems like this whole timeline, like, and I think you had said about July and some other people with July too. So it's interesting how it's all kind of like unfolding.
I'm not sure. Nothing is happening to me. Kind of, but not. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I
Like
had
right
to,
now specifically, or just overall, you mean?
well, I mean, like I don't, if I don't search for things, like I went to do the hypnosis, right?
Mhm.
I don't think that things would happen to me. Like I would have some, or let's say if I did the activation, right? So I was activated. So I was connected to the Galactic Council or something, right? I I don't know if how does that happen when you dream or you get visits or I don't know.
I'm not exactly sure either. I'm not that connected yet. I mean, I
Because
get like my daily kind of, thoughts and communications or messages sometimes, depending on what it is. But from what I understand with some of those other channelers, they tap into that, consciously through sort of their, I guess, meditation, but it's kind of a channeling process at the same time, I guess. And, some people are more adept at like, astral traveling and those sort of things. And I think we all do it now, whether we're like consciously aware of it and remember doing it is another thing, but I think we all do it in our sleep. And I've heard of different channelers talking about, participating in these astral battles. And I made a video about it, a week ago with the whole lunar eclipse that was going on. And they were supposedly doing some work up on the moon. So,
I watched that. Yes.
yeah, interesting. So I'm not sure how it turned out or what happened, but I get the feeling that it was a success. But any way to confirm that, I have no idea right now. So,
That's what I understood. Is it just everything all imagined or is it really happening?
well, I feel like it's kind of one and the same because, well, I guess it depends on which side of the glass you're looking from, because I feel like our imagination is more than we understand. And as we were told and, conditioned to believe that our imagination is make believe, when maybe our imagination is just tapping into what's more of really out there, we're tapping into that collective unconscious, and we're seeing things that other people have already envisioned or that is out there to be tapped into. So I don't know that our imagination is necessarily make believe. I don't know that it's just not like us tapping into more of what's out there, sort of that fifth dimensional, knowing, and bringing it into that third dimension through our, dreams or meditations, or, just consciously being aware of what we're doing.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Maybe it is all make believe. I don't know. But I will say that when I meet people like you or other people that I've met from different parts of the world and had these conversations, or I just did a video about the buildings that we had talked about a little bit in our session or our last video. And, people getting those exact same visions and drawings and things that I've seen, so it's like, it kind of makes it hard to believe that it's just all imagination or coincidence, when there's, people across the world seeing and getting the same messages. So, yeah, but, anything's possible. So,
Yes, it's I don't know, it's hard. I mean, I can give you my example too. So
yeah.
I was, again, it's hard to believe, but it looked like I was in New York in my past life, probably the one right before this one, because it was so like I lived in some kind of industrial area. It was very modern, right? And I
Mm,
was so cute, like a mix between black and white. I was born as a boy, and anyway, it doesn't matter what happened. But then, as there, I would call her practitioner. Sorry, um, practitioner or therapist. Yeah. So she was leading me through times of that one life, right? Okay. So imagine yourself 20 years later and so on, right? So I was I had this beautiful curly hair, like an afro, but not so much afro, and I was this dude, and he was so handsome. And I had lived in this family. They were black as like the nutty professor,
yeah.
huge family. I was so different from them, and I understood that I was either my parents died or they abandoned me. But I understood also later on that they were traveling so much, so they put me into, it was my dad's side of family, and
Mm,
I kind of like was taking care of them or something. So I was missing them so much, and so I'm bringing this into this life. Doesn't matter, but yes, as I was growing up, then also um I saw myself in San Francisco. And
mm,
I was Brian or Ryan, right? And I'm like, how does that? And I really love states. I really love like the 50s, 60s for some reason,
mm,
the music, the clothing, and the kind of like I feel it. I just can't explain why in the world, coming from Europe, living in Canada, and I have such a strong, have always had this, I loved watching these movies and so on, the music, and then Saturday, who was John Travolta. He had this movie Saturday Night
Saturday Night
Fever,
Fever. Yeah.
and I was a kid watching it like this, in my eyes, and this life, and I'm like, that's not possible. Me like that? I
Yeah.
mean, he's handsome, but
Yeah.
it's like what? I can't believe, but
Yeah.
that's what showed up.
Yeah. It's interesting because and I've heard that we can tap into past lives that aren't ours, and we can tap into past lives that are ours. I don't know what the difference is, and I don't know how you would tell the difference, if you are. So I mean, because I've had some people say, or you've heard a lot of people say where they are the same, being from the past life or something, or so many people claim to be Mother Mary or whoever it is, and from what I've channeled about that is that some people truly are, because one way you got to look at it too is like this oversoul, of Mother Mary or whoever is probably this giant oversoul that has all these other souls coming. So that everybody's having those kind of collective memories. So they would be that same person in a, and that, and then on top of that, we're all one and all that sort of thing too. So, um, but then I've also heard that there's ways, and I don't know if it's through like the hypnosis, or if it's more through like plant medicine and those sort of things, but where people can just kind of observe those other timelines and think that they're experiencing that they're that person, but really they're just kind of observing and tapping into that timeline. So there's like two different, and I don't know if the perspective would be the kind of determining factor, where if you're kind of third person, like seeing it happen, if that's more you tapping in, or if you're like experiencing the first person, if that would be the distinction. I'm not exactly sure, but I have heard that there's kind of two different ways to see past lives. So I'd be interested, if other people have information about that.
I did saw future.
That's cool.
It was the like city in the sky and so on.
Nice.
But because it was so distant for me to grasp that, I couldn't proceed anyway. And then later on, I was like, oh, that was the future, I guess, right? So I felt this girl again. It was like a who I'm just thinking of some kind of famous person that I can say, like Diana Ross.
Mm-hmm.
So I had different face, but the hair and everything, right? That's what I saw myself, but I felt like it's not me.
Oh,
That's what you just
yeah.
explained.
So that's interesting. And I wonder if that's kind of how you would know the difference, if it's more of just a feeling where it's like, this is just me more observing this than, or this was, because there's certain things where, those past lives that we talked about before and stuff, where it's like, you definitely feel it and you definitely know that, this was part of you and felt those emotions or whatever. And then I could see how other times it could kind of just be more of like an observer, like, oh, this doesn't feel like it's me. This is just me seeing something, I guess. So it'd be interesting with that kind of knowledge to go into one of those sessions and see the difference maybe.
Well, I think that the first time is very puzzling, so you have to repeat because I don't think that we really understand a lot of things unless we experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now that I did experience it, I know how it feels. I would talk a lot more. I would be able to describe more, and I wasn't scared, but at the same time, it's like, I don't, it's like your logical mind starts to step in for sure. But I was like, I see me floating on some kind of like a surfboard up in the sky, and it's like, damn, that's like so like a foolish thing. I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I would let myself talk fully.
Yeah. Because understanding that,
Whatever comes up, comes up, and yeah.
yeah, because I think one thing that gets kind of confused is that um, we don't necessarily live our lives in chronological order. We can incarnate in the future, then the past, then where we're at now. There's no chronological order as far as incarnations go. So it's more of a, you, from what I understand, it's you're incarnating based on what you need to learn as far as your growth is. So that's what time period or whatever you'll pick to incarnate in to learn those lessons the best that you can, however that is.
Right.
So that why some people can tap into like future lives, and some people tap into past and whatever else. So it just depends on what you've lived and what you needed to learn based on the lessons that you needed, or the karma that you had to clear or whatever.
Well, I would be wondering what it would be for me if I go a little further, because I did, wired myself before the session that I do want to know, like, let's say the future of the whole society. And also I wanted to, like connect with my higher self so it can show me other possibilities, right? Whatever is out there, and connect myself to, let's say, if I have some galactic family out there, right? So it did, but I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting anything, but this was like, what? So, I wasn't probably, now that I wasn't accepting it, now that I was, it's sort of like scared of going in, like be open enough to experience that.
Yeah.
But it was so weird. Like I didn't feel the connection. That was above anything else of all of my feelings. So this girl was in some kind of suit, and it was such a weird suit, and it was so futuristic. So then I saw like a castle in the jungle. That doesn't match together, in some kind of like Brazilian or some Hawaiian jungle.
Hmm.
luscious green, and this very military looking like castle with towers, um, and cupolas and everything. It's like it's medieval, but it's futuristic. It's like military, also very gray, very feels very mm, ugly, like not nothing that you want to be in or
Mm.
you want to step in.
Yeah.
And then I saw this soldier, you know, and then all of a sudden that changed to some kind of like different color. Instead of gray, I saw red, and it was like Taj Mahal.
Hmm.
And the soldier was coming, 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 and there was like a gate. If you imagine Buckingham Palace,
Hmm.
and they have this gate, and then they have this floor, and then the entrance to the Buckingham Palace, right? So the soldiers, where they show the changing of the guards, that's like on the square there or something, right? And then there's this gate, the fence or so. Exactly, that's what I saw. And then this soldier was coming. He went through the gate, looked at me, glanced, and then just continued. So I'm not sure. I felt like I'm in some kind of video game, seriously. And I was
Hmm.
like, I don't want to be there. I don't know what's this. And I felt like I'm on some kind of mission.
Hmm. Interesting. And you can't tell if it was future or past.
It was like a merge of things. And I was just like, wow, I don't
Well, I get
understand.
the feeling I've kind of, our human history is so, distorted from what it really is. Like I get the feeling that human history is millions of years longer than they've led us to believe. And there's been many ups and downs of incarnations of, societies rising and falling and technology getting to certain points. And, one of the things that I've channeled, Ariah told me is like, if you were put on a desert island and, you know, you had just your family there to procreate, like how long before everything, how many generations before everything is forgotten? You'd be relegated to cave people pretty quickly, right? I mean, everything would be within 3 generations, everything's forgotten pretty much. So if you look at, the rise of societies and technologies, and all it takes is, a nuclear war or, something to go awry, like in Atlantis or whatever it is, that completely relegates people back to cave people and starting over, and how many times, and how many times has that happened through history. So be interesting, what time period that actually was, and maybe it's something that we don't even know about yet, that was millions of years ago or something that is, or maybe it's millions of years in the future, who knows. It's interesting like how far it goes. And but yeah, I definitely get the feeling that human history is much much older than we've been led to believe.
There's yet another truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Can you imagine? Um, yeah. And so that's why it's stories.
Yeah.
It is logo. It's like, wow, it's never ending.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, hearing the different, especially now that, with like the pyramids and the Sphinx and those sort of things, and they're starting to realize that they're much, much older than we even previously, even the people who thought they were older than they were to begin with, that they're saying like this could be like millions of years old, not just 25,000 or whatever it is, because they're starting to say that. I've heard, theories that the marking and like the wearing away on the Sphinx and the pyramids and such was actually because they were underwater at one time, that there was, from the flooding or whatever happened, that, and that's where all that that the Sphinx head was a lot larger and the face was a lot more, it was supposed to be, in the sides they said you can see where the water lines were eroded away. And so that could be millions of years, and we're thinking it's 25,000, or some people think it's, I guess it just depends on what you believe these days, because
Right.
there's people who believe the earth is 4,000 years old. So I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It just depends on what you believe. But, I tend to believe that, I don't know, I get this feeling that even there was mankind, in the dinosaur age, but they were more, hidden in
Maybe.
caves and relegated that way, and there was just an imbalance that had to be rebalanced at the time.
Absolutely possible. Yeah.
Yeah, but I get the feeling there's been, millions of years of humankind, and, different civilizations that have come and fallen and, went away and whatever. And I mean, you just look at, I mean, even just our own limited human history that we know of, and how much stuff has been erased and, destroyed, or there's no, even semblance of that civilization anymore, based on, like they're finding in, what is it, in the Amazon and stuff, they're finding these remnants of these cities that are completely just been, overgrown through the jungles and completely lost and forgotten about. So I'm like, how many times has that happened in history, that we just completely, a flood happens or whatever and completely wipes out, or a plague comes and wipes out a whole, civilization, and then their stuff just gets completely washed away in history, or even worse, where it's done on purpose,
Mhm, mhm.
erased, their history. So, because
Well,
I've always wondered that too, like how many, because when I've seen my landing in past life, and I had this like grayish skin, it was more, it looked kind of alien like, but it was still human, but it makes me wonder like how many different races there have been throughout history that have been completely wiped out. How many gray people were there, purple people, or whatever it was, how many different races were there that have just been completely annihilated from, either intentionally or through, plagues or whatever else it is. So it's always made me curious.
well, and then also adding that there's not just us, but other civilizations out there that come to us,
Mhm.
planet Earth. And how about I'm not sure where I watched it. Probably on Netflix, like a long time ago, they had this, I guess, Planet Earth series, National Geographic, talking about mega tsunamis and mega storms, mega everything, right?
Mhm.
So it just came to my mind when you were talking about the flooding, and it was a long time in the history, and water changes a lot too, right? And
Right.
everything is underwater for so long. With our technology, that is like almost no technology in comparison to what other technologies are out there.
Well, what we know about it anyway.
So I want to ask you, what do you know about the motherboard and the dark wanting us to be connected to this motherboard? And also vaccination was one of the events that they wanted to inject this nanotechnology in us so that we would be connected to this motherboard that they are.
Are you talking about with like the 5G and stuff?
Well, I don't know. That's what I've heard from the therapist. She was telling me that the battle basically, the good is winning over the bad, or the light over the dark. So the
Yeah.
dark had the plan that we are going to be connected to this motherboard, and it was happening for a very long time, and we were.
Yeah, I mean, I think
We were
it's,
kind of like a zombie. We were kind of like zombies all this time, and they almost got us, but
and I still think they got a lot of people. I don't think that it's totally, I think there's a lot of people who have escaped, and I think there's a lot of people who never will. Um, but I don't know the whole,
oh, so it's like an AI. Now I remember.
yeah.
Sorry. She was saying that this AI, they wanted basically us to become half humans, half
Yeah,
robots.
it's that, I don't know if you heard that Neuralink thing that Elon Musk was
Yeah.
designing. That's supposedly part of it, where they're trying to, I mean, essentially what it's going to do is they want to hook up your consciousness to the AI so that they can control what you think and see and do and all those different things. And people will think it's great, like, oh, look, I can connect to the internet in my brain and I don't have to have a phone. And then it's like, yeah, but they can also control you too. So, and I don't know. I mean, a lot of it, maybe it's conspiracy theory. I don't have any evidence or haven't channeled anything about it. So I'm just going purely on my own speculation or whatever. But I believe that if I'm putting connecting the dots, just being an observer and zooming out and saying, why would they want you to have a forced vaccination? Why all of a sudden are they pushing to give away 5G phones for free to everybody? New customers and old customers, all of a sudden everybody gets a new 5G phone right after they force everybody to get a vaccine. They're putting up all these 5G towers. Supposedly there's graphene oxide in these vaccines, so that's going to, obviously, if you've seen what graphene oxide does, they can control it through sound waves and they can actually make it become 3D and come to life. So I mean, if you play the right frequency through a 5G tower and you have this graphene oxide within you, you do the math. I don't know. Maybe it's all made up. I have no idea. Just putting together the pieces that I've seen. Um, So maybe that's the plan. But yeah, from what I've heard and channeled, that basically the game's over, but you got to let the time run off, I guess, the clock essentially. So the light has won. They've hit the kind of, I don't know, point of no return, I guess, if you want to call it. Like there's enough people awakened that it's inevitable. But it's just kind of a matter of letting the game clock wind down and, letting it play out, I guess, is more so the darkness is kind of pulling out all the stops. That's why you're seeing, like, I don't know if you saw that, that guy who just mowed down like 20 people in that Christmas parade the other day. And this is all speculation, but I'm guessing that you're going to see a lot more really dark things happening here in, the near future, it's just kind of that last gasp, that last grasp at trying to, get people any way that they can control through fear or, anger or whatever else it is. Whenever you're in those lower vibratory states, that's how they win. So control yourself. Not you specifically, but whoever's watching.
I understand.
Yeah.
I said something like that to someone I know exactly, and she said like, "Oh, don't be fooled." But I'm like, I don't know. That's exactly. It feels like what you just said. They're gonna do all kinds of. They're like, we're gonna hear all kinds of events that are like, wow, the
Yeah.
last batch of the badness.
Yeah. So what it is you got to think, even just reading a news headline, oh, 4 people died in a car crash. What's your immediate feeling? What's the first emotion that comes to you? Sadness, fear, one of those, not a good emotion. So right away, how many people in a supermarket walk by and read that headline on the newspaper sitting there and immediately go into that emotion state? Now over and over and over, and they keep you in that low vibratory state. So the more negative things that can happen, the more headlines they can print, the more that they can keep you in that low vibratory state because you're reacting to these negative events, then they're winning.
And no matter how much you don't let it get in, your heart does recognize it. Yeah. And that's the thing, that your brain recognizes things 10 seconds later than your heart. That's what I was reading in what is it? The Dr. Joe Dispenza's book about belief. I'm not sure what's the name of that book anymore. Sorry, it was Lipton, and then he has some other book anyway. So he was talking about, actually very interesting, when you go to a doctor and the doctor himself doesn't really trust that medication, but he does prescribe it to you anyway, that's not going to work for you. But if the doctor would really believe so strongly in it, and with his heart, like, I'm doing so good, the intention is there and the belief is there, that is going to definitely like cure you within very short time. So let's say if you have to take antibiotics for a week and you have to finish the dose, right, for it to really work. For example, you have a sore throat or some kind of flu, whatever. And so they were measuring people who were sick and then different doctors prescribing the antibiotics. And so they said somebody got much out of it much faster than the other people, and they had recurring symptoms. So they had to get further treatment. It was because the doctors were the key point in there and their beliefs, right?
So I'm going to take it one step further. It's not the doctors. The doctors are the trigger for your belief system. So when the doctor comes in confidently and says, I'm 100% confident that this is going to get rid of this in X amount of days, your whole belief system is, this guy knows more than me. He's right. I believe him. Now your belief system just accepted that medicine is going to do what he says. Now the same doctor comes in and says, I don't know if this is going to do it, blah, 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 blah. Now you're going to get that result. So it's all your belief system of how you interpret that. So it's the drug that's why the placebo effect is so consistent, because it's what you
name of the book, you are the placebo.
yeah, the placebo effect is really what it is. It's your belief system that you can heal yourself, and you're going to put that trust into that doctor because you believe that he knows what he's talking about. So that's where it's more your belief system than their belief system. But I see what you're saying, where it's, if you believe that they believe what they're saying they believe, then it's going to give you that trust and that power. It's the same thing when you take an aspirin. You think, oh, I have a headache, I take an aspirin, it goes away. What if you just thought, I don't want to have a headache anymore, and it goes away? Maybe it works
What
too.
my son said. So he had cold, and it was his birthday last weekend. And so he, I don't know, Friday it was okay, Saturday got worse, and then Sunday was his birthday, 21st exactly. And so he was like, um blowing his nose, and I would spray the saline, spray and so on. And on Sunday he would wake up, "Oh, I don't have cold anymore." I'm like, cool, okay, so you don't. But he, the Kleenex box, he used all of them on
Mhm.
Saturday. Like he was really blowing so much of the mucus out, and Sunday nothing.
Yeah.
Wow, I was like, good for
So,
you.
so yeah,
It's the
that's one of the
belief, but
things that
it
I
works
channeled
together.
about. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you.
Sorry, it's the belief, but it works together with the same thing is for the surgery, right? If
Yeah,
you put the power
absolutely.
into, and like with everything, so we can generalize, if you put yourself, if you put your own power into somebody else's hands, right,
Mhm.
you believe you have no power,
Right.
then it's all up to that kind of person to
Right.
have that belief for you. But it also works, like it's intertwined, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, one of the, things I channeled about, how many people do you know that, oh, I get sick every Christmas, or I get sick every year on this time, or whatever it is. And it's like, well, you believe that. So yeah, of course that's gonna happen. Now, you also have met people that don't ever get sick, and they say, I never get sick. There's a reason for that, because they believe that they're not going to get sick. And from what I've channeled, once you reach a certain vibratory state, you're not even susceptible to viruses, because they're more of a low vibratory, they're, you're only susceptible to them when you're in a lower vibratory state. So understanding that, and understanding the power that you have and the control that you have over that. Like me personally, I don't believe I'll ever get sick again in my life. That's just how I feel. I haven't been sick in years. Like I don't believe that, if I do get sick, I say that, sick's getting me. I'm not getting sick, they're getting me. So, it's just kind of a mindset. And I'm sure that's kind of what your son did too. He was like, I got a party on Sunday, I'm not being sick for that. So that he made his
Exactly.
mind up that that's how it was going to go, and that's how it went. So I think it's very much, and we don't think that consciously, but subconsciously it's like, hey, I got a party, I got to be good on Sunday, that's my day. So you made it
You
happen.
put so much importance, yeah, like I love my day, I love myself, and I was so impressed. I was very happy for that, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So going back to what you were saying, keeping us low by vibrating on the low, showing us all these news, and obviously um, feeding us with all kinds of things. That is going to be overturned as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could do it right now. Stop watching, stop paying attention.
Well,
Understand what
yes,
it is. Understand when you read the headline at the grocery store why it's there. Be aware of why they're putting that there and what the point is, and then you can control your emotions. Because this is what I think is the confusing part of this ascension process and going through this for some people. It's not about getting rid of the, stimuli or whatever. That stuff's not going to go away until you stop paying attention to it. So if you're saying, I need to get rid of this, you're still talking about it, you're still giving it attention, you're still, so it still exists. How this all changes, whoever's listening, if you want to change this, if you want to speed this ascension process up, stop paying attention,
thank
stop
you.
giving it any energy. Because, and again, quantum physics and science is starting to prove this, the things that you give attention to, that's what exists. If you don't give attention to things, they disappear. So, and this happens, understand, on an individual, and then how it works with the collective. But on a collective level, if we all turned off the news would cease to exist. That's how simple it
That's
is.
what I was actually asking, because no, obviously I don't pay attention to that.
Yeah.
I watch news like, you videos like that. That's my news.
Yeah.
But I was thinking of the mainstream media, right? That is not gonna be able to, like, I mean, again, I'm not sure, because I see my little bubble, which is more of this side of the world, but there's another hemisphere, right? Where
Mhm.
is China and Russia?
Yeah.
It's going to be
Well, in
difficult.
China, they know that their TV is propaganda, so they don't watch it. America, we're still confused.
And that's hmm. I wanted to ask you, but what do you think? Um, to ascend the entire planet. In China, they may know it's a propaganda, but the belief is so strongly carried, in their DNA, in their cells. All of these murders that they had on babies because they couldn't have the second one, so they murdered the second one or the third and so on, right?
Mhm.
There's lots of karma too. So what do you think? Have you asked about, like, how long is it going to take? Like, for example, the video yesterday that I was watching as well about the 144,000 souls and Elon Musk, he was saying about 100 years. That's from
Mhm.
Metro Dawn.
Until you mean until like the shift is complete or the split is complete, or what do you mean?
Yeah.
I really don't know. I've questioned that myself. I get the feeling that it's not. So I know it's not like the shift happens, everything's roses and flowers. Like I know it's not happening like that. There's going to be the awakening phase, and then I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of finalization of where the two frequencies are completely split from each other and not interacting at some point. How that happens, I'm not sure, but I also understand. So it, as a lot of us who are enlightened at this point right now are kind of in that fifth dimension, going back and forth between dimensions sort of thing. It's on an individual basis. Some individuals can reach higher dimensions even than the fifth, so it's, you can go higher, lower, whatever, but that's an individual level. So to raise the collective conscious, there has to be an average, I guess, of so many people with this enlightenment, and there has to be where the bottom person equals out to where the middle is the fifth dimension, whatever. So once we get to the fifth dimension, it's not like everything is, because I mean, we're in the fifth dimension a lot of times now, and nothing, there's no difference. When you go outside, it's just you're not paying attention to all the, the horrors, and it's the birds are chirping, the sun's shining. That's essentially what it is. And then it's the learning the abilities and evolving through that fifth dimension, getting to that end state is where things are really going to be a lot of different, night and day, I would say, compared to, in a lot of ways, compared to what we experience now, as far as telepathy and the way we manifest things more instantly. And, the sort of going back to like the way the natives were in treating the earth, and being grateful for everything and thanking the trees and thanking the grass and the water, and just being more in tune and in touch with everything. And I don't think that that's anytime soon that that's going to happen. I think that the progression to that is already started. And I think there's some people who have been doing that since the beginning of time, and there's always going to be people who are in touch with that and understand that. But I think the collective getting to that point, is probably at least 50 to 100 years away, from getting to where it's a huge, where that's more the norm than the, abnormal, I guess would be the better way to say it. Because, all of these things that are going to happen, I feel like are already happening to some degree with certain individuals. There's already people who are healing and doing these things, that were these telepathic healing and, these next level Reikis and all these different things. I think there's been people that have been doing it since even before Jesus. I think that this is nothing new. It's just a matter of it being suppressed and then reignited and understood, and kind of going through these waves. But I think more people are open to it now. I think more people are understanding of what's going on and embracing the gifts that they have. And I do believe that right now, with the veil being thinner and the energy being higher, the vibration being higher, that these energies are more powerful than they may have been in the past on a collective level. Like I think Jesus was probably still tapping into some stuff that, we're not there yet, sort of thing. But I do believe it's all the same type of energy and the same things that we're doing. But I do think it's becoming easier and more mainstream, I guess, every day as people talk about it and hear about it and see the validity to it and those sort of things. And the other side's doing a great job of pushing people over to this side as well. When you're seeing, like, nobody wants to be forced to do anything, is that's the bottom line in life, regardless if it's good for you or bad for you. You tell me to go eat something I want to eat, I don't even want to eat it anymore because you told me to do it. You know what I mean? So it's like, it doesn't matter what it is behind that you're trying to force on me. I don't want to be forced to do anything. And I think that's going to be, people are going to be being pushed so hard this vaccine and by, these mandates and by everything else that they, keep trying to push. And then it's going to be climate change is going to be the next big thing. So everybody's prepared for that. They're going to start pushing climate change real hard. It's going to, COVID's basically just going to disappear. And then it's going to be climate change is the whole thing. And you're breathing too much and we need a carbon tax for every breath you take. I mean, that's going to be where it eventually goes. And, people are going to start to, if they haven't already, which is just kind of ridiculous if you haven't already, but there has to be a resistance point where it's, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing what you tell me to do. Like there's no reason to be doing what you're told to do, unless you're just one of those out of control maniacs who can't control yourself and you're out there hurting people or animals or something. That's the only time we need to control people. Like other than that, like we have gotten so far away from what humanity is supposed to be. With this free expression of everything, and we've with our political correctness and other ways that we've learned to control people and limit their lexicon and their vocabulary and what they can say and what they can't say and what's this is not appropriate, this is appropriate, and it's like all you're doing is making people fear what they say, what they do, and then you put them in this tiny little box where they can't say anything or do anything, and they have to sit there with their mask on and sit straight forward. And it's like that's where it's heading if we don't resist. And there's no violence needed. There's no all you have to do is stop participating, stop playing the game, and it ends.
Yeah, I have nothing to say. So true.
Yeah,
so true. But on the other hand, I think that some people still believe that they comply. They're so good. I'm such a good person when I do that. You're just a rebel.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, because the problem is so many people are insecure and they need that external validation that, oh, you're a good person because you complied, you wore your mask, here's a pat on the back, here's your free, donut or whatever they're given. I don't know. Here's a reward for doing what you were told. And people think that, oh, I need that external validation, instead of understanding that when you go inside and realize that you're all you need, and you don't need other people's external validation, you don't need all these, you start to realize, that's where I get annoyed. I'm kind of getting off track here, but I sometimes go on Facebook and argue with people more than I ever should. And oh, where's your facts to back this up, and where's this, and I can go post it, and then people are so ingrained with, that's not from CNN, how could that be a reputable source? And that's not this, or how could that be a reputable source? And then on top of that, a lot of things I'm channeling, so I'm not gonna say, hey, I channeled this from
that's my proof.
Right. So it's like it's a waste of time for me. I still have this like part of me that wants to help people and try to wake people up as much as possible, and then the other part of me is like, at this point, if you don't see it yourself, then good luck to you. Because and especially when you're arguing with people, they have I don't know if you ever heard the term useful idiots before, but that's what the people who are defending the people who are controlling them, and they don't even realize it. And they're out there fighting the battle for them and not even realizing that they're doing the destruction to themselves. So
well, I think it all comes down to money.
Mhm.
Money is everything. You have to pay bills, you have to eat, and you have to live somewhere. So they're going to comply. For example, stupid thing like, okay, I'm not sure how it is in the States, but in GTA, the Greater Toronto area, you go to a restaurant, you can sit down, take your mask off, you're still in the same space, so you know what I'm talking about. But entering it, you have to have a mask or 3, just in case. I mean, and people will do that. And when you tell them, I don't even hear you, do you get that? And they would be like, I don't want to be fired and so on, right?
Yeah.
So it's all annoying. I understand you.
Well, and that's the issue is, like we said before, an individual can go into that situation and say, I'm not wearing a mask and get fired, or I'm not getting a vaccine and get fired, like many people have done. And yeah, I mean, it makes the needle tick, a little bit, but when that whole entire employee base says we're not doing it, then what are they going to do? They're going to shut down their whole business operation to comply with some, tyrannical order? Or are they going to say, I got to feed my kids and keep my business open, I got to make this decision of I need employees. and they're not going to do this. So that's really where it comes down to. And that's where I don't care how big the corporation is. I don't care how big it is. They need the employees, the CEOs who are passing these mandates. Without them, they can replace and find another CEO. If every employee stops working because they don't want to comply with it, what are they can't replace 3,000 people overnight. That company is going to take a huge hit and a huge loss. And they're going to see that the employee is ultimately who decides what should be done.
Well,
But it takes
imagine,
everybody.
yeah, well, imagine Amazon is hiring and they're big, right? So they're hiring and they give you bonus $100 if you're vaccinated. Like, how is $100 going to cover what? Nothing. You cannot buy anything. And $100. So I'm not sure if people get hooked, but they
Well, yeah,
need
it's
some
desperation
help,
is
right?
part of it, You get fired from one job and then this other job offers you $100 bonus and they're going to do this or do that for you. And, it's dangling the carrot. And when enough, and you're already starting to see it, especially in certain countries and stuff, but once they can't dangle the carrot anymore, once, enough people have said, okay, we took all the incentives then it's going to become force. And that's when it's gonna, they're gonna, and they're already doing it in some places. They're requiring vaccine passports to go to restaurants and different things. And and that's what when people say there should be a law or there should be this, everybody needs to understand what that ultimately means. That means that if somebody says, no, I'm not complying with whatever, trivial law that you created, it ultimately will end up with somebody dying if it goes that far. So every time you say there should be a law, understand that potentially that means that somebody needs to die over whatever you think should have this law. So because that's where it's heading, because enough people, and I'm one of them included, if I get pushed too far, there is no way that I will comply with this tyrannical takeover that's happening. And there's a line in the sand, and I'm not going out there looking for trouble, but I guarantee if you come knocking on my door, there will be trouble. So I'm not one of those pacifists who's going to stand by and let you do whatever you want. That's not going to happen. And that's not what this is about. This is about drawing the line in the sand and saying, we are free people. We are here to evolve in the way that we wish to. You are in our way. And more people that understand that and begin to think like that. And I'm saying this is not a violent thing. This is just a disregarding of your, made up authority. We do not comply. We do not consent. It's you made up this, you derived this authority from some time before I was even born or even able to give any consent. I do not comply. And all these politicians who write these, laws, and then the police enforce them without having any, thought or, and that's where this all goes. It's all compartmentalization. You have people who write the laws who don't have to enforce them, and you have the people who are dependent on their paycheck to feed their family, the ones who have to enforce them. So it creates this, element of I have to do this to feed my family. I'm just doing my job. And it's like, well, don't do your job. Your job was to defend the Constitution. That's your job. And anything that supersedes that or goes, against that, you don't have to follow that order. So it's a whole changing of the conditioned mindset that we've been raised through. And school is a huge part of it. All it is a conditioning camp. It creates this reward system for compliance. You listened and you repeated back exactly what I told you. Here's your A. Here's your ticket to go to the next level that does the exact same thing at the next, on a little bit more of a bigger scale, more intense scale. And then by the time they're in college, kids, they're these maniacs that are running around with purple hair, burning cities because they don't even know what's really happening.
I'm laughing, but it's sad.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to judge anybody. If you want to have purple hair, go for it. I don't judge anybody. I'm just saying it seems to be a theme of these. There's a particular individual that gets taken over, and they're possessed. There's really no other way to say it. Maybe whether it's demonic possession or whatever it is, their mind is controlled by somebody else. They are not thinking their own thoughts. They're doing what they're told. And that's what they want. They want robots who are just going to obey authority, no matter how ridiculous it is, no matter how many times it contradicts itself. And you see it over and over and over every single day. If you're able to have an attention span longer than 30 seconds, you can see the manipulation and the counter argument that they present to themselves every single day, how they contradict themselves. Pay attention and understand what they're doing. When you're aware of it and you see it, it's become so obvious. All of these things to people who are awakened are just, everybody who knows is probably just sitting there shaking their head like, yeah, yep, super obvious. But the people who are still not awakened to it yet, they don't see it. But then as soon as you do awaken to it, it's like, oh my God, how did I not realize this before?
you know, partly it is also because they have their own business to pay attention to.
Yeah.
I mean, they are distracted by
And I mean, you look at it's
work
by
and work
design, right?
and
If
the families, and they don't have time to watch and
right.
wake up. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're so busy worried about your bills and how you take care of yourself and pay, that's what I mean, that's what this society that they've created, where people don't have time to wake up because they're so busy working. They don't have time to do their own research. All they have to do is trust the guy on the news. He wouldn't lie to you. You know, so
No, of
it's
course
this
not.
society that we've created of you don't have to think anymore. We'll do it for you. You just sit there and listen to what we have to say because we're smarter than you. And that's they say that and not those exact words, but it's pretty much those exact words.
I agree. It's like when you see something is going on with your kids, you go, I mean, old pattern was that you said, that's your job. You are the teacher, right? And I'm stepping back. I'm just a parent, but that's not the case. I mean, you are actually the best teacher for your child. And
Right.
you just trust that they have, this is their job. This is what they are doing their entire day. But yeah,
Yeah.
the reporters, they do the same thing. You are the one bringing us the news because that's your job. But what kind of news is that, Jace?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the problem is that we've put so much trust in this authority that people are so
Naive.
defensive even when you bring up the possibility, like, you know, when you start talking about legitimate programs that have taken place within the CIA and within the government and everything that are there to 100% give disinformation. When you talk about how Obama signed the bill back in, I think it was 2013, making it legal for propaganda to be on the news again. Like there's literally all these things that have happened, these steps that have been taken to get where we are to the point that we're at, that has the most dynamic, enormous, and influential propaganda machine in the history of the world. And people, you know, I probably say it on every interview I do, but the old Mark Twain quote of it's easier to fool people than it is to convince them they've been fooled. And that's where we're at. Is so many people would rather think that they're right and not have to admit that they've been fooled than to admit that this whole thing is a farce, that it's an illusion that we've been caught up in.
So what's the term useful idiot?
Yes. That was a term that the communists, I believe, came up with. It's basically the people who will parrot everything that they see on the news, and they're doing the work for, you know, they're the ones out there fighting the battle on Facebook, telling you how stupid you are and you're conspiracy theorists. You know, those are the ones, that's the easiest people. You control those people. Now you have Twitter taken care of. You know, your whole Twitter feed is a bunch of useful idiots out there retweeting the same, you know, nonsense that CNN just told them. And they don't do any research. They don't have any mind to. They just believe everything they're told and they do exactly what they're told. And so they're useful idiots. They're useful people who are idiots. And then as soon as, you know, whatever they were needed to do in every communist regime, they are lined up on the wall and murdered because they're the ones who are out there and they'll actually do the stuff. So it's, I mean, that's why history is so important. And I know history is written by the winners and I understand all these different parts of history, but understanding and learning from certain things and certain aspects, history does repeat itself because people don't learn. And the same things happen. And we're doing the same things that happened in Nazi Germany in the 1930s are happening worldwide right now. And people can't even believe or understand that that's what's happening.
Do you
And I
think
thought it
that
was hilarious because I was working in, you know, the schools before, as I told you, and we were reading a book called Night, written by Elie Wiesel, I think his name is. He was a survivor of the Holocaust. Um, and this book is laying out, you
sorry,
know,
when you were
curfews, and
saying
they had to wear these things to go out. Oh, I'm sorry.
when you were reading it with whom? With the children? What grade?
Yeah, yeah, in school with the kids, we're reading this book, you know,
What
and
grade?
it's talking about the curfews and you know, having to wear the star when they go out and all these different things they couldn't do. And you know, the teacher is sitting here talking about, we read these books and we learn these things so that we don't, you know, so this can't repeat itself and this can't happen. And the whole time it's like, you don't even see the parallels of what's happening, the irony of what you're saying and how we're supposed to
No.
be teaching these signs to look out for, and they're happening right in front of our face. And it's just like, that's how far gone people are. They can't connect the dots.
Well, I think they're also afraid to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just
Well,
want
and
to
when
know
you have public
what grade
schools, you
was
have this authority, you know. I'm sorry.
it? What grade was it?
That's high school.
That's high school. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just sort of assumed that you were working for like middle school or junior school. I don't know why.
I did middle school
Maybe
also.
you mentioned that to me. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But it was high school. Okay.
Yeah, this was, the year before I got fired. So yeah, it was
So
my last year there.
they're afraid, and then you're saying the authority. They're afraid of the authority. Yes.
Well, I don't know if it's afraid or just belief. I'm a teacher, so therefore I know more than you.
Could be
That
both.
sort of, you know, it's just that assumed authority and that assumed knowledge. And, it's the same thing. I remember when I went into the military for the first time, and, you go to basic training and stuff, and the drill sergeants, and you just assume that they know everything there is to know about the military. And then as you kind of progress through and you realize it's just some random guy that wanted to go be a drill sergeant for a couple weeks. And it's like, oh, okay.
Right.
So it's just that illusion of authority type of thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, can we continue this a little later?
Sure. Maybe, well, I guess tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Maybe later in the week, Friday. Does that work for you? Or
We can do it in the morning.
okay, yeah. Yeah, let me know. This
I
is
will.
good.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Goodness. So we're gonna continue from where we left off. Enjoy your day.
All
Take
right,
care.
you too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.